Well, hello there. Welcome to this new video. It's been a while since I created a video, but I figured it's time for a new one. So in this video, I'm going slightly beyond my comfort zone because I'll be going outside of Microsoft Purview, and I'll be looking at some compliance features within another platform for Microsoft, and that's called Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So in this video, I want to show you what it is, what does it look like, basically what are the options you have with Defender for Cloud, and also just to give you a glimpse of what the differences are with Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Compliance Manager, Purview Compliance Manager. I'll show you that as well. So, well, let's start with a little look around both of those platforms. Okay, well, let's start out with a little familiar territory, and that's Microsoft Purview, of course. And over here we see the Compliance Manager, and I cannot stress enough the importance of this platform. It's got so much potential. It can help your organization really getting an insight into regulations and how these have been affecting your cloud environment. And speaking of which, if we look at assessments, we'll see the assessments which I currently have running in my environment. And what I want to do is just to show you, because in a couple of minutes we'll be looking at Defender for Cloud. I just want to show you what the experience is like within the Compliance Manager. So for this I've created an assessment. Those assessments can be created based on a variety of regulations. So in my case I use the ISO 27001 for this, and if I open this one up, I'll get, well, basically the status and the improvements I can achieve using this template specifically for Azure. And as you can see, well, I've got no points achieved at this moment. Microsoft managed points are at nearly 100%, I must say. And I just wanted to show you this because although it's included in the Compliance Manager, it's not as detailed as the Defender for Cloud, which we're going to look in a couple of minutes. So just to give you an example, over here I have my controls, and these are based on ISO. So these are very well, these should be recognizable. If you're in the Dutch government, those will be recognizable as well. If you look at the baseline information protection government or the BO, those are basically relevantly the same. So just for example, over here I have got my cryptography sorry, a control. I've got a policy, and here I have my improvement actions. If I want to know what Microsoft is doing in my Azure environment, I can go to Microsoft Actions, and here are my actions. And well, one thing you might notice already, those are just abbreviations. If you go to the assessment for Microsoft 365, for example, you'll notice that those controls and those improvement actions will have a very detailed description. In my case, they don't have any description. They do have things like the action type, so that's either technical, documentation, or operational. And if you look again at the assessment, for example, in Microsoft 365, you will see that there's a lot of technical action types which the system can detect on its own, which makes sense and also creates that compliance score. So that really is something which is a very big enhancement for reason for using this Compliance Manager. For Azure, that's not the case. So we don't get to see any improvements based on really your Azure infrastructure. Basically, you get recommendations. So if I just open this one first, that's a technical recommendation. So again, if I had like the same recommendation for Microsoft 365, I would have really solid improvement actions, and some of those will be detected by the system itself. Here I just get, well, you're responsible for reviewing and updating, blah blah blah. So this is it is a technical thing, but still it's a recommendation, and that's basically in a nutshell what the compliance manager in the Azure assessment templates will do. So I just wanted to show you this one, but let's get to the Defender for Cloud as well. So let's go there. Okay, here I am in my Azure portal. As you can see, I already have some resources. I've got some subscriptions. I've got some resource groups. And that's also the focus for this video. I really want to focus on Azure resources, subscriptions, etc. Why is that relevant? Well, because if we go to Defender for Cloud, which is over here, you must realize that Defender for Cloud is basically a multi-cloud environment. You can see that already over here. I have my security posture, and it has some recommendations. It includes Azure, but it can also include AWS, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud. So there's really a very important reason to really include Defender for Cloud in your cloud security architecture. Of course, what we're interested in right now for this video is to look at regulatory compliance, and that's also a standard part of Defender for Cloud. So that's why I want to go there as well. Well, as you can see, I already have some assessments. These are basically the same as in the Compliance Manager, for example. So, well, let's go there. So I can go over here, or I can simply go over here, regulatory compliance. Okay, this one, is it clear for you? Yes, it is. So let's okay, what do we see right now? Well, the Defender for Cloud from a default standpoint comes with a Azure Security Benchmark version 3. The Compliance Manager, the Purview Compliance Manager, also has one of those default assessments, which is included in your basic subscription or your licensing fee. With the Compliance Manager, that's called the Data Protection Baseline, and here it is the Azure Security Benchmark. And what you see over here are the components which are part of this benchmark. And as you can see already, I've got several which are okay, and I've got several which, well, are not that okay. I must perhaps tell you this in advance, but this is just a simple demo environment. I've got a little bit of resources in here, but still it does give you an example of how this looks like. So I'll just go into these in a couple of minutes. First, I want to go into what you see over here. These are your compliance regulations. So you see things like the ISO, the payment card industry standard over here. I've got a SOC template, and as you might notice, I've also got an ISO, a newer template over here. That's because this one was out of date and I need to remove that, and I added it to my subscription over here. I'll show you in a minute how you can add specific regulations. But before I do, just to go up here, if I want to just simply download a report of the current status based on this selected assessment, then I simply go to download report, and it says, okay, you want to benchmark. If I don't want that benchmark, I want, for example, the PCI, I can say download, and it will download a specific PDF with the recommendations. If I, yep, that's okay. If I want to add specific compliance regulations, or I want to remove them, for example, I can go to Manage Compliance Policies. I'll just skip this one, and if I want to do a overtime workbook, I can go there. What does a overtime workbook mean? Well, if you go back to the Purview Compliance Manager, you'll notice that it has a schedule built in, which basically just scans on a specific period to see if there's any changes and if there's any improvements, or well, if there's any things which were deprecated or something else. So that's really a continuous process. That doesn't work in Defender for Cloud. For Defender for Cloud, you really need to use that compliance over time workbook to get that working. So what you're seeing right now in this screen is basically the as is moment. So let's take a look at those compliance recommendations. Okay, like I said, I've got some specific regulations over here. So let's, I just showed you the ISO 27001 in the Compliance Manager. So let's take a look at how that looks like here in the Defender for Cloud. So, well, again, you'll see several of the items, well, basically all of the items which are basically a part of this regulation. And as you might notice, there's a lot of them are grayed out, and that's because, well, either Microsoft is in the lead for those and you don't have to bother with them, or some of those things are basically operational or documentational, or well, cannot really be scanned by this template. So that's really something you need to take into account, that the Defender for Cloud is able to scan your environment and to look for recommendations based on the regulation. So for example, well, let's just open just a gray one just to be sure. If I open this one and I go to secure areas, you'll see a lot of recommendations, but well, this is Microsoft stuff. Physical access to the environment, that's really Microsoft's responsibility, and that's why you see over here there's an MS sign. So that's basically within the shared responsibility model, that's Microsoft's piece of the puzzle. Let's go to the encryption or cryptology or cryptography section, because that's the one I also used in the Compliance Manager. So let's open this one up, and I'll go to the same controls, and over here you'll see, well, my responsibility. That's because it has a C over here. The other one, as you might remember over here, it's got an MS. So in the shared responsibility model, you either have an MS, which is Microsoft, you either have a C, which is customer, or you can also have a combined action, and that's a C and an MS. So what do I see over here? Well, I see the status, the compliance status of the specific, well, in this case, specific machines. I see the resource type, which is part of this recommendation. I can also see that there's a quick fix for specific storage accounts in my environment. So, well, let's take a look at one of those recommendations. So, for example, let's say virtual machines should encrypt temp files. Okay, temp disks. Okay. And as you can see over here, I'm not too careful, so I've got like a couple of virtual machines over here, and they don't have any, they don't encrypt their temp disks. So what I can do over here, I can either, basically just say, okay, I'll just assign an owner for this, so this can be addressed by that owner. It's kind of like a planning tool, which is also part of the Compliance Manager, of course, but in this case it's part of Defender for Cloud. So I can add this. I might even have created a specific logic app for this, for this exact scenario. So if I don't have that right now, but let's say I do, then I can trigger that logic app at this moment. I can also, for example, let's go for this one, for example, I just can exempt this one from the specific policy. So it says, okay, you want to exempt this, what's the exemption name, and basically this is the audit log. Why did I choose to exempt this from a specific recommendation which also has a severity of high? Okay, well, this was these were some of the controls for the ISO compliancy. So let's say if we go back to, for example, the Azure Security Benchmark, and you'll notice that I've got a lot of well, controls added to this to the mix. So, for example, let's say go to Identity Management, and over here you already see that I've got customer managed controls and Microsoft managed controls. So let's open this one up. If I want to have more details on this specific control, I can go to control details, for example, and over here I have, well, this is more or less the same as in the compliance manager as well. So I have some information on the control, how I can implement the control, etc. So let's close this one, and over here I've got well, SQL Server should have an Azure AD admin provision, so let's go there. So I've got well, 0 unhealthy resources, which fortunately for me, and I've got 1 SQL Server which well, has healthy resources. So the AD administrator has been provided to this server, so that that makes sense. So going back, I can well, basically just go through this for, well, on a specific well, in a specific time frame, for example, and let's say I want to add specific compliance rules to my environment. So I can do this by going to the compliance policy settings, and over here I get my well, an overview of my Azure environment. So if I go over here, I have a subscription, just a pay-as-you-go subscription. There's a couple of things behind this. One is a log analytics workspace, for example, but the one I need to go to is my subscription, and over here I can go to edit settings. I'm sorry. So over here I see well, the Defender for Cloud plan, which is enabled for my resources. Over here, which resources are this, etc., etc. And well, basically to add any compliance regulation, I need to go to my security policy, which is over here. And over here I see what's been added by default. So that's the Azure Security well, default enabled. And if I go over here, I see, well, that's this one, that's the out-of-the-box one, and over here I have specific ones which are also out of the box, but which are added by myself. So I can, if let's say I want to add a specific standard to this subscription, I can go to add a standard and just wait a couple of seconds, hopefully, and there they are. You will have to admit, if you look at these regulatory compliance standards which you can add to your Azure environment, these are well, there are very specific ones. For example, the NIST SP 800, which is very relevant, so you might want to look at this one. But if we just compare this to the compliance manager, and let's just go back just 1 sec to the compliance manager and to the assessment templates which are available there, you'll probably notice here those are there are, well, 714 premium assessments added to the compliance manager. So from a template point of view, I won't say it's limited. There are less compliance standards available within Defender for Cloud, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad platform, of course, but just to keep that in mind. For well, people within the Dutch government, it might also be very cool to know that Microsoft itself added not too long ago a specific assessment template for the BO or the baseline informatiebeveiliging overheid. So that's something to look at as well. It creates basically the same overview you see here, and also includes information on the BO. Something I'm also working on for the compliance manager, by the way. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show you in this video. So Defender for Cloud, not just for, well, basically defending your cloud resources, but also looking into specific regulatory compliance. If you well, want to know more on this, I'll add some links in the blog which I wrote on this subject as well. And I well, basically hope you liked this video. Thank you so much for looking at it.